Well, Switzerland has a position that subsidies are not really its policy. It, we really want to be competitive, and to be competitive means to really have a good framework for the economy, which means that we have to have skilled labor, we stick to the rule of law, a moderate tax level, also a tight fiscal policy, and also budgetary discipline. This is, I think, in the long run, more rewarding than just to go into subsidies that are financed by debts again. And this will be paid by the taxpayer tomorrow, probably, and especially with interest rates remaining quite high, debts are, as I said, quite costly.
There are a couple of big threats that we hear last time when we sat down and spoke as well. The geopolitics, multiple conflicts that are not going away. Yeah. We've also got concerns around trade as we set up for the US election, whether we're talking about more trade fragmentation that also even encompasses Europe more between allies. How big a concern is this for you?
Well, we're concerned about protectionism, of course, because I feel that the free market and free market access is in fact a recipe for prosperity. Because otherwise, if you have protectionist policy, it's also the consumer that is going to pay for it domestically, but also internationally. And I think there is no alternative to the free exchange of goods, which really creates prosperity.
I want to move on to banks because we've all been looking at the Swiss example around the consolidation of UBS and Credit Suisse to see what it should mean for European banks. And on the back of that, there is talk of some sort of cross-border consolidation between the likes of UniCredit and Commerzbank. Is there a lesson here that bigger could be better, may not necessarily be dangerous for the banking system? How do you think about what you've created and what that means for Europe?
In spring, the government published a report on the financial and banking stability, which are the learnings of the Credit Suisse failure. And we believe that there has to be a framework in place, not only nationally, but also internationally, that prevents another crisis. We can talk about the debt level again, because the debt level also is a threat to the financial stability. But we really also need a level playing field, for instance, with Basel III, because this is also a protection of the investor. It's a protection of the taxpayer, be he American or Swiss or French. Just in case of an event or a crisis of the banking system, I think it is our task to really limit the tail risks, especially for the taxpayer. He cannot be made responsible for the failure and mismanagement of a bank.
And let me get into the weeds a bit more around some of the deal making, because you've addressed concerns around consolidating two big banks that also have very similar client base. That is a key risk that UniCredit and Commerzbank are dealing with, that if there is consolidation, it could impact lending to medium-sized businesses in Germany, for instance. How do you address those concerns, having enough banks offering enough competition and not minimizing services to key arms of the economy?
Well, I can only talk for Switzerland, and we have more than 200 banks. And there is, of course, competition. And international banks also have a free market access in Switzerland. So companies in Switzerland are also free to work with foreign banks. So I feel that there is enough competition, but we have to have the safeguards, as I said. We really have to find the right balance between competition and competitiveness on the one hand, because we want to have a financial center that is competitive, but on the other hand, we want to have a financial center that is safe. You can invest your money into and be sure that in case of a failure, the taxpayer or the investor doesn't have to take the responsibility for the failure or the mistakes that have been made. So this also means adequate and pragmatic regulation.
The banking story was an interesting one because it also tested the notion of Switzerland as a brand, just how safe Switzerland is. And in recent months, we've seen your currency appreciate on safe haven flows as the dollar declined. And clearly there are a lot of ructions around the dollar as we head to an election as well. Are you worried about some more currency volatility as we head towards the US election?
Well, of course, the Swiss franc has always been quite strong. And I mean, the Swiss franc is, of course, quite a challenge for the export industry in Switzerland. On the other hand, as you said, it is a safe haven and it is also a guarantee for a solid economy. But it depends a bit on which sector you work in, especially the machinery industry. Of course, it is very export oriented. Really has to deal with the strong Swiss franc. And this is maybe also the price you pay for your own currency and an independent national bank. So we just have to cope with that in a certain way.